It's my pleasure to introduce the final panel today dealing with contemporary issues related to the treaties of California Indian Country. We will again hear from each speaker in turn and then open up for discussion afterwards. So our first speaker is Sean Milanovich, who is an enrolled member of the Agua Caliente Band of Coahuila Indians. He is also the Associate Curator of Anthropology at the Riverside Metropolitan Museum and is a doctoral student at UC Riverside, writing his dissertation on the two Southern California treaties. Welcome, Sean.
Miahui. Can you all hear me okay? All right. What I wanted to talk about today is tribal identity. And tribal identity, really isn't from a scholarly position. This is more of a journey. This is our life right here, and personal experience. And right here, this is a map of our Cahuilla area, and here in Southern California. And the Cahuilla, they went all the way out. Our main area was just west of the Salton Sea in the Palm Springs area, out in the Coachella Valley, and we're surrounded by the San Jacinto Mountains to the west, the Santa Rosas to the south, and the Little San Bernardinos to the north. And you can see in this map, the dark area is our traditional use area. And then as you kind of spread out from there, it kind of fades into a lighter color. And that just is to show that the area is just not one straight line defined. You can go on either side. The tribe, I haven't heard anyone talk about what a tribe is. What is a tribe? What is an Indian? And where do those words come from? I've learned that a tribe is governed by two entities. You have spiritual law and natural law. Next one, slide. The natural law, slide. It's rooted in spiritual law. Next slide. So, natural law is rooted in our creation story. Natural law is defined by our creator, Mukat. Mukat, he gave us instruction to take care of our land, of the earth, the mountains, the water, all the plants, all the animals, our brothers and sisters. This is natural law, but it's rooted in spiritual law, and this was given to us in the very beginning by our creator, Mukat. And Mukat, he had a twin brother, Tamayawat. How does this help us? The spiritual law, natural law. It gives us our ceremonies. It gives us our songs, our language. It defines who we are as a people. You see a picture up there. This is the first all-woman, one of the first pictures of the all-woman tribal council. Anyone, can step up to the plate and, speak your language, talk about your story, your feelings, your life, and the Creator's behind you. He's behind you, giving you that strength. And also our stories, through the ceremonies and the songs, they give certain people different medicine. Some of those medicines carried in sacred bundles. So what is this relationship that we have with the land? A picture on the left shows, several years later, after 1852, that's January 5th, 1852, is when Juan Paulsowich, he was our leader at the time from our reservation, from our area, and he was the one that signed the Treaty of Temecula. But on May 15th, 1876, our reservation was established through executive order from President Grant. And there was a couple other villages, that were created into reservations. Tribes were created, but we had this special relationship with the land. And what's the relationship? So the people who signed that treaty, President Grant, or this executive order, what kind of a relationship does he have with the tribes? Just because he signed this executive order creating the reservation, does that mean, he can come over for dinner any day of the week because he made us a reservation? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't, we were already a people, we were already the Kuya people. Since time immemorial, from the very beginning, we were Kuya. This doesn't do anything for us in that sense. We benefit from it, yes, but we were defined long before this reservation was established. Our moieties, some of our moieties, the Isil and the Tuca, they define who we are. And my family, I'm Isil, I'm Coyote, come from Snow Creek area, and that's where the Coyotes come from. But some of the tribes, such as this tribe right here, Ramona, they're proud of the elements that the land gives us. And the land gives us these moieties, these ideas, these definitions of who we are. And so I put the slide up to show you Isil, the Coyote, and Tucat, the bobcat. Suka tevisnekish, that's the white deer. Down in our spring, we're named for our spring, Seki, Palsuish. And down in the bottom of that spring lives this white deer. And inside that spring, a lot of other Nukatim, the first created beings. And these beings had a lot of power. And that power still exists today. It's just, we've, lost contact with it. And but some of the people, they still have that contact, but this being lives down inside that spring. And you can still go there and see them. Painik, the Painikton people of Andreas Canyon, they live here in this beautiful canyon right here. And this canyon provided everything to the people. It gave them food, medicine, and shelter. It gave security to their kids. And there's a lot of stories, and all those mountains, there's sharp, jagged mountains all around. And we hear stories in our creation story, how those mountains came to be. And when the two brothers, after they had created the earth, they were quarreling back and forth. And Temayawat, he got angry, and he took his huyanawat, his sacred staff, and he thrusted it down into the ground. The ground shook violently, and it rattled. And Temayawat, he took his creatures, and he went down inside into the earth. And when that happened, all the mountains started to form up all around us. And so these mountains that are there today happened at the beginning of time, and our stories tell us that. So what does it mean to be Kuya? What does it mean to be agua caliente? We don't need laws to tell us who we are, where we come from. Our stories tell us who we are. Our family tells us who we are. We did gain some tribal identity from the Treaty of Temecula. There was a physical area that was described, and it put us on the map. Politically, people found out who we were. So water rights. In the very beginning, Mukat told us, to watch out for our resources. Water is one of those. Part of our identity is political and cultural. Here we have our spring. This is not the actual spring itself. This is a pool, but all that water that you see right there comes from the ground. This is our spring water right here, and that spring ties us to the land. It ties us to creation. It ties us to who we are as a people and why we settled there at that place. But it's also political. It's cultural, and we call this place Saki, and it means boiling water. Also, political, cultural identity. And today, through political identity, right now the tribe is, going through litigation right now on possessory interest tax. So the Riverside County is charging all of our leaseholders extra money, and they can't do that. It's our land, so we're taking it. We're going to court over it. We don't agree with it, and but that's our political identity, and we have the right to do that. Part of our identity is to go out and collect. So every spring we go out and collect agave, and we cook that agave, and we feed our people, our elders, and we have gatherings. Several gatherings, a couple times during the spring, to go out and harvest the different plants that are available. And there's also ceremonies out there. A long time ago, we had ceremonies in the fall, the winter, and the spring. And we're trying to bring some of those ceremonies back now, and to understand what the importance is. Part of our identity as a people is to decide what we do with our relatives when they pass away. It was a few years ago. My Uncle Jimmy, he passed away, and it was always his idea that he wanted to be cremated. And before he had passed away, he had talked with one of my uncles and said that, if I pass away, will you help me cremate my body? And so they both decided that they would help one another. And so he was cremated. And we did it on our tribal property. And now cremation is, it's happening on other reservations. And this was something that we did in the past, and we're bringing it back. Not everyone does it, but a few people do that. But this identity, it comes through relationships with the land, with the people, and you got to bring up tribal sovereignty, self-determination, and as I said, it really involves spiritual law, cultural law, natural law, and this is the future right here. This is my grandson. This is what's his name? Miguel. So this is Miguel, and this is this is the future of identity. This is the person that's going to be telling those stories, sharing those songs, fighting for our rights, and that's what it's all about. It's about passing it on to your family, for the next 7 generations. And what we're doing right here today was passed along 7 generations ago, so that this very day could happen right now. Aloha. Thank you.
Our next presenter is Larry Benegas, and he is the founder and president of Kumeyaay.com. He has served as a member of the Tribal Council for the Barona Band of Kumeyaay Indians and is a graduate of Cal State Long Beach and has a master's degree from San Diego State. He was raised on the Barona Reservation and teaches Kumeyaay culture and tradition to the community. He has taught California Indian history and traditional knowledge at DQ University and at Sequan, and presently sits on the American Indian Recruitment Programs Board. Larry.
Hauka, Mayu Temawa, Inya, Kumeyaay Barona, Miyu, Payamikachum, and Liseño. Inya Yehang Nakweka Wu, Hanta I'm supposed to speak English today. So that was Kumeyaay and a little bit of Liseño side. And I'm going to go indigenous on you today, and I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story, a very personal story about my family, my people, your people who have the same story as myself. A long time ago, beginning of time, our people were here in this country, across the nation. My people live in the southern part of California. Indicates that we've been there for 14,000 years by the anthropologist. We believe we've been there since the beginning of time. We have our creation story about how we got here and our relationship to the universe. And for thousands of years, my people lived on this land and thrived. Very intelligent people. You're not any more intelligent than they are. We have scientists, we had teachers, we had our leaders, we had a complete society that we developed for thousands of years. So every year our traditional knowledge was handed down to the next generation. And we developed, if I can use that word, but we lived in this country and learned how to be human. We also learned how to respect every little living thing that there is today. I'm going to try and give you that side of it, which is more indigenous in the way I think I was raised by my people and the understanding and the philosophies of what life is about. So it's not going to be academic, it's not going to be intellectual, it's going to be me telling you a story about my people and how that affected me through time, and I'll bring it up to today, where we are today. So my people believed that we were part of this universe. So we'd get up in the morning and we would look around at the mountains, the trees, and appreciate that we were a part of that. There was something about waking up and be with our people. We just didn't run off and do jobs and things like that. We sat around and looked into each other's eyes and we talked. We talked about many things. In California, we didn't have to talk about snow, hurricanes, and stuff like that. We have beautiful weather here, so we philosophized about the world. We became great scientists. We became great land managers and on for thousands of years. Every year we developed a better way of how we could live life within this planet. So we would appreciate nature because that was our living room. Nature was a huge part of our life and our thinking and our philosophy and taught us everything we know. So number one, our philosophy is that we're energy and we came from another place out there. And the energy is there in the universe. And then all of a sudden we came here and now we're here on this planet. We ended up here for a short time. And how miraculous is that us, human beings, ended up at this time and place on this planet. Our people really appreciated that and praised that. That was like a miracle that we're here, which is true. So the fact that you're sitting here in this room and that we are experiencing this time and place is a miracle. And we felt that way. So we appreciated everything that existed. The mountains, we learned that the mountains had certain properties. Like in San Diego, there are 3 mountain peaks that are very sacred. And we conducted our ceremonies on top of the mountain because we found there was a certain energy up there that was wonderful and guided us and our people for thousands of years. By living in this planet, recognized certain energies that happen on this planet, on this mountain, and then this mountain over here. So on top of the mountain, there's a real strong energy, and that's where we anointed our leaders. Down below, we did the passage of rites for our young people and helped them to and I'm talking about teenagers here, helping them to be more controllable, I guess, or whatever. So anyway, that was, you know, what teenagers are. But we had our methods of dealing with that, is what I'm saying. So, and it was a beautiful way, because after it was done, they were humans and they were men and they were women. They weren't silly anymore. They were serious, and they earned it, and they became part of the tribe. And they took their place, and everybody had a special talent that nobody else had. Like everybody in this room, you have a special talent that nobody else has. And we would monopolize that. For instance, if somebody was a healer, their families for years discovered that these plants and this way of medicine worked for our people. So that family, those people became doctors, as we say today. So they healed us. And for thousands of years, that's the way we did it. We used nature to be a part of that therapy, the rocks, the sky, the seasons, on, because that's was what worked. And through time, we found out that those methods did work. And have you ever tried making an axe out of a rock? A tool out of a rock, a granite hard rock? My people did, and they made it beautifully. It was, again, angle on the other side with like a hammer, put a leather around it, put it on a stick, and it was just great. Today we have the tools to do the modern way, or whatever they call that, but back then they had to develop that their own ways. But not only that, have you seen our baskets? They're beautiful. Baskets are a scientific marvel as far as I'm considered, because, you just don't go out and pick the plants. First of all, you got to get permission. You have to pray. You have to sing that this planet supplied this for you to do this. I mean, it's just being thankful for that. There's nothing wrong with that. And it helps you appreciate what this plant and the properties are to this whole thing. So certain times of the year, the seasons are very important to us. Like we are in winter now, things are going to sleep. The trees lose their leaves. So we as people do the same thing. So whatever is going on with us, we are sleeping, or we are in that zone, I guess you would call it, because it's winter. And because the moon is in that position, because the earth is here and the sun is there, it causes a certain change of energy. But not only that, this month we have like 4 planets lining up. They didn't know that, of course, but I'm sure they knew those places up there because my people were great astronomers. They knew about the skies, and they knew about the seasons, and they had history about the whole cosmic world. And on top of that, my people could communicate with the cosmos because they were very spiritual. They knew about certain things that if we conducted ourselves in this manner, then we can talk to the universe. We can have a relationship with space and time. My medicine people, I shouldn't say it like that. The medicine people, they know that. When I went to them and they would talk about the universe, space, and time, it was beyond me. How do you know those kinds of things? How do you know time started like this? And how do you know light was like that? But they knew because they had that communication with space. And whatever they did, they were able to communicate. And so they could give it to me. So I understand that better. And that we are part of a bigger picture here. We are such silly beings sometimes, but when you really look at the miracle of life and what's around us, which our people knew for thousands of years, it's just incredible. We've learned from the animals. The birds are very important to us. We've learned how to communicate, record, sing, dance, dress from the birds, because our people saw these birds and how they did it. We adapted that to our way of life, and so we dance like them. The coyotes, the mountain lions, the others taught us, the deer, that was our staple. We had to learn their way of life. We had to really appreciate that they were given their life so we could live. And so that was a daily process of our life. The sun was really important to us. So with that, every person had respect, and for thousands of years, it was a beautiful way of living each day. I'll put it that way, because every day was precious. And for thousands of years, we lived that way. But, we did have our skirmishes. We didn't own land, because owning land was like owning the air or something like that. We had our territories, but usually that was for hunting. When let me tell you that these people, our people, my people were ingenious. They were great people. They were wonderful. They were very intelligent. It seems silly that I'm telling you this, but it's true. And the reason I'm telling you that, because that was all reversed, but I'm saying for thousands of years, our people were here in this land, and they lived in a beautiful way. Of course, we had our little problems, but from what I have researched and done, I'm amazed at what these people did. So therefore, that's what life was like every year, every century, on and on. We had a great relationship with the ocean. We knew about the ocean. My people have a creation story that we came from the ocean. The mountains have their certain power. And so everything around us was just, for appreciation, and we become a part of that. So when these other people came, it changed everything. The manifest destiny, Columbus and all that stuff that you've read about, which is only one-sided, of course, and they don't want to tell the story. Our story is very sad. So started on the East Coast, moved this way. Everywhere that they went, they took everything. They took their life. They took the philosophy. They took their land, took the religions, killed all the leaders, medicine people, wiped them out, women, children. It's a horrible, horrible, brutal, ugly story here in California. The gold rush was really notorious for killing a lot of us here in California. We were the last one of the states. They wanted to throw us off in some island in Catalina, round us up. They also wanted just to exterminate us, kill us, wipe us out. And if you've done any research about that period of time, it is just really horrible. It's awful what they did to us. Brutalized us for years, not one time took our land. We talk about the laws here this morning. We didn't have a chance because the people who moved in, they would go to town and write these laws against our people, and they could do it. Our people had no recourse to go back to say that's not true, and they banded together, took our land, killed us, and on and on. It's a brutal, awful story, but this just didn't happen in a short period of time. It was over many, many years that our people were brutalized, our children, on and on. The boarding schools, when they took our children away to systematically assimilate them, I said, how horrible is that? Can you imagine today some government coming in and taking your kids to assimilate to another place, and they were brutally abused and all that? It's just horrible. And they're still living today. You hear their stories, it just goes on and on. And for my people anyway, we were Mexicans. It was better to be Mexicans because you're Indian, you probably shot. We had to hide. We had to run to the mountains. Kumeyaay, fortunately, we did fight back. We were one of the few who did fight and protested against all that, but they also, took a lot of us too and put us in their missions and stuff like that. And Father Sarah in that group wasn't very nice to us at all and changed a lot of things. So that is colonization. They came in, they colonized us, and we still suffer from that today. When your people have been slaves, when they've been brutalized, when they were everything unimaginable in a horrible way for periods of time, of course your attitude and the way that you live is going to change. You're nothing anymore. You have to run, you have to hide, whatever it is that you are. And our people did that. But we maintained, and we were somehow got through. And I thank my ancestors every day for their courage and their strength to get through all that. Like my people. My grandfather was killed during the Federation because he was one of the Indian cops, and they killed him in Campbell because they were trying to, it was a political thing, it got out of hand, and he lost his life over that. Unfortunately, he was the BIA police, but he was just doing his job, and he's, again, fighting amongst our own people, and so that occurred as well. Anyway, so it's a terrible thing. So today, what do we have? I think you know the story of how they put us on reservations, took our land. We're talking about getting our land back and all that other stuff. My people, we were in Capitan Grande along with Viejas. My mom is from La Jolla, so I am Liceño, and that history is part of me as well. But for us Kumeyaay, we ended up on El Capitan Reservoir, our land. It was Capitan Grande. San Diego wanted the water rights, so we sold them the water rights, and Viejas went to their reservation, and we went to Barona. We bought the land with the money we got. We made Barona, put it into trust. In 1932, my people moved from El Capitan to Barona, and we've been there ever since. Racism, being really poor, those Indians up in the mountains. We had to fight very young. When we went to the public schools, we had to band together in order to fight because cowboys didn't like Indians. That's the way I grew up. On the reservation, it was really nice. Family helped each other out. I didn't have a computer, iPhone, or whatever. We ran out and we leave in the morning and come back sometime in the night. We'd grab a horse, go riding. We had lakes, we'd hunt. Wonderful, wonderful time outside and playing. But then when we went into town, it was a whole different thing because we're off the reservation and we got to go fight the white people. And that was I think the notion, because that's just you got to watch out for yourself because they don't like you, is it. And on top of that, you're not very good. You're from those people. You guys are stupid. You're alcoholics. You're fat. You're all those negative things that they said about us growing up that way. So if it weren't for my grandmother and my elders telling me, look, this is the way the world is, and you're going to have to work and you're going to have to fight, but don't forget where you came from and what you people did for you. Don't ever forget that and where you came from, and be strong because you have to fight for us. You are the ones that have to carry on. And so with that, that's how it was. For myself, I left the reservation. First went to graduate, get my bachelor's at Long Beach State. Went to Alcatraz with Ed Castile up there, and we helped with the American Indian movement because we were mad as hell. We ain't going to take it anymore. And some of us young bucks at the time were going to go up there, and it was a good thing because the American Indian movement started and all that stuff. And that was our generation. We're saying we're not going to take it. And then that was the start of us being recognized, as people in this country, and that we aren't going to take it anymore, and we want our rights back. And I'm so proud to be a part of that movement, and here we are today. And I'm still continuing, along with Ed and some of you in this room, with this fight, to recognize. And I want to say, you are being colonized as well, along with us. And one of the things that we have to do is recognize what this did to our people, why there is alcoholism, why there is diabetes, why we don't work together, why it is we don't do these things to make our life better, to get our land back. It's because of the way we were treated for such a long time. It took me a while to realize all that happened, because I didn't care when I was young. I was just, wanted to get out and fight and all that stuff. But the thing is we have to do it together. Bottom line, all of us in this room have to do it together. There's no separation here as I see it. Like when you get in a sweat and you're doing a ceremony, it's all dark, it's all black, there's no color. So we're all just human beings, and that's what I was told. So anyway, colonization to this point is still affecting our tribes, and I am in the process of doing something different by exposing the history, how colonized affected us, and I work with graduate students now who have that same story. And when they tell their story about this, the tears start running. The hurt is still with us, Native people. The hurt is still there. We mask it, we deny it, we minimize it, but the hurt is still there. And if you really tell your story and you go in, and if you call yourself a Native, you have it. It's just the way it is. And so I've recovered, I guess you would say. And so like now I understand better what it's all about. Anyway, I want to say that we were colonized and our country still is being colonized because where everything is at, I think this is a violent world. I think we praise violence and all that. Look at the movies. And today, they are saying there's not enough ethnic people in the movie series. And so it's the same today. So our country is moving in a bad way. But the one thing we have to recognize is our Native people, because all the shootings, the things, when it comes to people rights, they talk about blacks, they talk about the Hispanic, but they never talk about the Native American, ever. If they do, it's just a little bypass, but all these major stories never include us. So I want to say that we need to be recognized, and our people have to make really major changes as well to work together. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Myra Maziel Zamora, and she's an enrolled member of the Pechanga Band of Liseño Indians and is assistant curator with Pechanga Cultural Resources. She has a Master of Arts in Anthropology from San Diego State University, where she wrote her thesis, Analysis of Ekwa, Temeku, a Liseño village site named Temeku. Welcome.
Adjust this a little. So I'm really glad to be here today. I didn't get to see the morning sessions, but I think all of you got a really good history of the treaties and all of the laws and everything that had happened. But I really want to focus on the emotional aspect of it. And, I'm from the Pechanga Band. We were affected by the Temecula Treaty of 1852. And, 23 years later, then evicted from the land that we were living on in the Temecula Valley near the water. And when I think about the emotion and what it did to the culture and the feelings, and a lot of the history doesn't address how people were feeling and how you felt and what it did to your family, what it did to your traditions and the religion. And, this past year we rewalked our eviction route because I wanted to bring awareness to our own community who sometimes don't forget or don't realize that it wasn't that long ago that this happened. And these dates that everyone's addressing, that's not that long ago. It's a very recent history. It's a very ugly history. It's very sad. A lot of people are very angry. And when you think about it, I'm amazed that we're still thriving and that we're still here and that we're able to speak our language, practice our religion. Pechanga has many traditional singers. My own brother is one of them. I praise him for keeping on those traditions. And it's a lifetime commitment. And I think the world is so different today than it was 200 years ago. We have full-time jobs and a lot of other things going. The world is spinning a mile a minute. But to stop and think about things and just stop and think and enjoy the silence and, smell and enjoy the world around us. I think a lot of folks forget today and with our technology. But just to kind of bring it back, into the land base, and I think that's also the theme of today, the history, and that our all of the removals, and that we'll never be perfectly on the land that we were thriving on for thousands of years, the world that we were created on. Everyone has their own creation story, and for Pechanga, we were created in the Temecula Valley. And just recently, our creation mountain Puesca Mountain was threatened. We had to pay millions of dollars just to save it. And I'm so grateful that we have the funds to save those type of things. We've bought other properties of land, are still trying to get them part of the reservation, but it's a constant battle. And I think if everyone in the room could just remember this is like a constant struggle. We are constant in recovery. You know, I work a lot with our Pechanga youth, and we're constantly telling them, you have to keep fighting. We have to keep practicing our traditions because that's all we have. Because at the end of the day, we just have each other. And, you know, family, no family, we're all part of the same tribe, and we're all kind of thriving for the same mission. But if you don't have your culture, you can't speak your language, you're not, you know, that makes us a tribe. And I think those are some of the things that we need to remember. And those are also some of the things that the treaties and you know, reservation removal and extermination were detrimental. And the emotion, you know, you had mentioned the boarding schools. You know, my grandma's 92 years old. She went to Sherman Indian School. I have spent a tremendous amount of time with her, and she even says, "I'm still in recovery. We're still recovering from all this uproot of our culture, from all these people coming in and destroying our beauty and destroying the land." So if we can, I think, you know, when we talk about history and we talk about the law, you know, I would like to kind of leave you with, if we can just remember that these are people, and that we're still alive today, and we believe that we were created here and we're not going anywhere. I think that, you know, if I can just kind of end with that, it's just, we're still alive, we're still thriving. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful culture. I love my culture. I love all, you know, I have respect for all Native cultures and all Indigenous cultures. And, you know, if we can just kind of maybe not forget the human. And, you know, I am also an archaeologist, and they do it all the time. They forget about the human. We can think about an artifact or, you know, a basket, but they forget about the human and the time that item took, and the time that all the stone tools took. That's an art. That's hard to make. I've recreated a grinding stone. That takes a lot of work. And if we can kind of put the respect back into the culture and appreciate it, native or non-native, you know, please remember that. So I leave you with that today.
We have William Pink, and he is a Capeño elder and culture bearer with great knowledge of tribal botany, culture, and history. He helped found the Pechanga Nursery and shares his knowledge of plants and traditional ways with the community.
Okay, unlike Ed Castillo, somebody stole my flash drive. Okay, just shows how more progressive I am than Ed. Anyway, when I got here, I kind of had everything laid out, had my flash drive. I didn't do a PowerPoint, but a lot of documents from the archives, and they become meaningless after listening to today. And so I'm just going to go off the cuff on most of this stuff. I was Executive Secretary of the Native American Heritage Mission from 80 to 83. I believe we accomplished a lot. What I'm not hearing in this history is the names that should not be forgotten. Walt Lahr, who's still alive, my Aunt Dee Lubo, Talbert Wilson, Bill Franklin, Jane Penn, even though she was my enemy. No, I'm talking about Catherine Sobel. She should not be forgotten. And at the same time, we're required to forget who these people are. So we're caught in that dichotomy of life, of who we are, because we're not supposed to speak their names anymore. We're not supposed to remember these people. We're supposed to let them go live with family and not bother them anymore. But they're the true historians. They're the names that should be remembered, not the people who get their PhDs and publish books, who want their names remembered. But it's these books, it comes from these people themselves. And this is the thing we've heard since I was a child. What about the Indian person? You know, we did a study, and I'll get back to the Unratified treaties, but there was a study that was proposed around Yosemite, and the Indians were not listened to, so I encouraged a grant be given to a non-Indian person so that the Indians could be heard. And the non-Indian person got a PhD, and she's well-renowned, Kat Anderson, for her work and study with plants and stuff like that. But the Indians get no credit. She acknowledges that she worked with Indian people, but the name in the end that's going to be remembered is going to be M.K. Anderson, which is Maria Cat Anderson. And so this is kind of the history that we have to live with and deal with. So just people that were important to me. Talbert Wilson, deeply involved with the Californian land claims, knew Pearl Willits, talked about him all the time. Talbert never missed a meeting with the Heritage Commission. Talked about times when they held dances to raise pennies so that they could pay the attorneys and send representatives to the different meetings so that Pitt River people could remain informed. Talbert Wilson died coming from a payphone because he didn't have a phone himself. He passed out and froze to death. That phone call was confirmed that he would be at the Heritage Commission the next day. This man should never be forgotten, as so many of them should never be forgotten. So, Walt Lahr is another one, Black Snake from Hoopa. He lives on Hoopa, but he's actually Yurok from the extension. And this man lived so much history with the Salmon Wars. A lot of people did not want to hear about the Salmon Wars, what was going on during that time, and the Yurok and the Hoopa people fighting for their rights and fishing rights along the Klamath River, which are extremely important, still important to today. It's who they are. It has everything to do with their culture. And, you know, at one point, he actually drove his truck off of the pier to stop a boat that was going to leave with Cecil Andrus, that time Secretary of Interior, who was going to tour the problem on the Klamath River. And the reason Walt did that, because there were several snipers who were going to kill Cecil Andrus if he took that tour. And Walt prevented that from occurring. He lost his truck and he had to do some time in county jail for it. But it was a bold move on his part because he knew that the killing of Cecil B. Andrus would have been the downfall for the Yurok people. You know, so he had to make that decision. He made the right decision. People made strong decisions back in those days, and they do today as well. I'm not going to diminish anything that's going on today. So I'm privileged because I got to know these people. I got to meet them. I got to work closely with Jane Penn. Jane Penn's probably the most unsung hero of the Kuya people, and her memory should not be forgotten. You know, she was the founder of Malky Museum, the first Indian-owned museum in the United States. Put up her property and the first $5 to pay for the museum. And it's still located on her property, the Malky Museum. And it has spearheaded the press for Indian people, created books, Temulpak, other books, that have become the foundation for much of the Indian knowledge today. That is Jane Penn. And we forget her. When her husband died, nobody would claim his body. He was a Seminole Indian from Florida. And he lay in the morgue for 30 days before they finally recovered his body and buried him next to Jane at Morongo. We forget. We forget who these important people are. You know, I was expelled from all California school systems at the age of 15. I was suspended from school for long hair 52 times in 1 year. You know, so I did attend a little bit of Mount San Jacinto, but my teachers were people like these: Walt Lahr, Jane Penn, Bill Franklin. Bill Franklin was my favorite out of all of them. He had so many stories. And that man came up with so much pain in his life, but all you could see was a smile on his face and the happiness with Chaucer Indian Grinding Rock of who this man really was. And it was fun to hear him speak because he was Miwok and he had an accent, and he'd invite you, he'd welcome you to his spectacular events. I can't. And everybody was going to have a good time. And, you know, it took great ingenuity to put together these conferences. And, you know, Chaucer Indian Grinding Rock is still there today, and it's worth visiting. But that came from Bill Franklin, and that's forgotten because State Parks now takes full claim for it. And Bill Franklin's name's not even a mention. We cannot forget these people. These are the people who should be in the history books, at least within my lifetime. Ed Castillo's another one. He's another living legend in himself. Did you and Talbot ever decide who the father was? Hey.
Bill Franklin danced my way.
Yeah, there you go. And so, so you know, probably, and Ed was one of my teachers as well too. He used to lecture at Saboba, and you know, I attended his classes, and I liked Ed's style of teaching. It was that oral tradition to get up and listen to somebody, and he didn't burden you with, oh, read this book before you come to my class. You know, he did all the research. He did a tremendous amount of work, and he was able to relate it back to everybody in such a way that everybody understood it, and it meant something. You know, and he didn't lose his notes in either, but. So, and I worked some time up in Hoopa. I spent time falling trees with Walt Laura for Timber Corp up there, up in Mills Creek, up in Mills Flat, and those areas up in there. And one time when I was going back up there, because I stayed with Walt in Oric when he lived in Oric at that time, and so anyway, Walt was on the side of the road talking to a sheriff, and so I naturally pulled over. He's my boss. I'm going to see what's going on. So I walked up to Walt and said, "What's happening?" And he says, "Well, BIA was out doing a timber survey in their helicopter, and the helicopter crashed." And so my first reaction, were they killed? Were they alive? And the sheriff says, "Well, I'm asking them the same thing." You know, so the sheriff butts in. So you're like, "Okay, Walt, what happened?" He says, "Well, you know, Walt, were there any survivors?" "Well, no, there weren't. We buried them." He said, "Why'd you bury them?" "Well, so the animals wouldn't get them. We didn't want the coyotes or the wolves or the bears to get their bodies." He said, "Walt, were you sure they were dead?" He says, "You know, they kept telling us they were alive, but you know how those, but you know how those BIO officials are. They always lie." So, and that's an old joke. That's not. So anyway, and listening, and I think the end up of this was, who are we today? You know, I grew up around my uncle John Meachik. Meachik was from Puerto La Cruz. He married my grandmother's aunt, Estefana, Aunt Fanny, and he was a bear shifter. And my mother used to get upset because he was shifting to a bear in front of us. Not out in the open one time, you know, it was usually in his little house that he had. And you see him do it, and he would come out as the bear. And he was never rough with us, but his brother was kind of a ruffian that spent 15 years in prison. And he did it mostly to defend himself from his brother. And when I tell that story, how can you make it believable? You know, I saw this as a child. I saw it happen in front of me. I saw the ability of this man, Meachik, to be able to shift into a bear. And it's an important part of our culture because we see it in so many stories of somebody shifting into a bear. To witness it, to actually have seen it, not on one occasion, but on several occasions. And what it comes from, and because we ask, you know, why is that? Why can they do it and we can't? Because they didn't come from a society of no. You know, we grow up in this world as a child, and it's that we have this learning into knowledge, and we can do anything until we're told no. So growing up in a Catholic religion saying, no, you can't change into a bear. So in my lifetime, I'll never be able to have that experience because I was told no. And so sometimes I feel that jealousy that I missed that time period, that I could have grown up in that period of not having the word no. That yes, you could change into a bear, into an eagle. Shane Penn's father was able to transform into an eagle because he was a medicine man. It was for the personal benefit to be able to fly out and treat people and to doctor them. And he doctored as far north as Bishop because he was able to travel that far because of his ability to shift into something that was beneficial. It was not for bad things. You know, and people have this power. But today, if I told that story to a different group, it would be like, okay, where do I sign his crazy papers? You know? So now I'll shift back to the unratified treaties. One of the things that was not mentioned today at all was the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. It was not mentioned. And you can't discuss, you know, the treaties of peace and friendship, because that was the original treaty of peace and friendship for California, was the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Two major provisions in there. that were important. One I remember, which has kind of been, was stricken, that the United States shall take no action so as to cause the Aboriginal inhabitants to become homeless. And this is where the term homeless Indians comes from. The United States having to abide by that portion of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. There's the Homeless Indian Act, there's the Homeless Indian Report. Homeless Indians. The United States shall take no action so as to cause the Aboriginal inhabitants to become homeless. You think they have violated the treaty? Duh. There's another provision in there, I think Article 9, which states that the United States shall make provision so as to not allow the savages to participate in incursions into Mexico. Right in the treaty, savages. However, somebody talked about John Savage today in the Trading Post up there. He had 46 Miwok wives, so there's a lot of savages that really are Indian in California. But moving into the 1852 treaty, which is kind of important to me on there, is the names and locations. Sovovo, Korongva, Korova, Korovang. Iva was not included, which I don't understand why. Pasitna was not included. San Ignacio with Coperapish, which was at Sage. It gets confused with the San Isidro. San Isidro, and his name was Ignacio in Warner Valley. One of the things that I found in there was Jose Noca Chingalingush, who signed on behalf of the Capeño people. And then I found a reference in Temapac where an unidentified plant by Salvador Lopez was referred to in the Kuya language as Chingalingush. So that name is referenced to a particular plant. So the names mean more than just a signature on a page. They're also village locations. When you look at the names on there and you realize how many tribal groups were actually left off and omitted from those things. Torres Martinez is represented by 11 different villages, yet it only came down to Torres and Martinez. And even then, they were forced together as one group. And when they forced them to live together, and this is a true fact, when they forced them to live together, HUD says, look, we're not going to put homes on your individual allotments or assignments. You're going to have to live together in a group. There were 5 murders in the first year. Those people were never meant to live together. It's not part of their culture. HUD ignored their culture and forced them to live in these little tight box colonies, which is unfortunate. What evolved out of the 1852 Unratified Treaties, First Act 1921 was the first Indian claims settlement, which I think was for $50 or $150? $150, which was attributed in 1925. Also combined itself with the Indian Citizen Act. It's where they made Indians full citizens. And was it for the benefit of the Indians? No, it created the ability to take property away. It was the same thing with the Allotment Act. You can give it to the Indians so we can take it away. That was the whole purpose of the Dawes Act. So the next thing in response to the unratified treaties was the Indian Claims Commission, which then resulted in the California Indian Judgment Roll, which was supposed to be a census of all Indians within California who were descended of persons from the 1852 treaties. You had to state on there who you were descended from under the 1852 treaties. In our case, for the Aguacalente Capeño, it was Chingalingush, Jose Noca. So, and that's what you go back to. If you look at the 1928 through 34 applications, there's all that reference to which treaty were you under. There is that question. The fault in those 28 applications then comes in this determination of blood degree. Now all of a sudden, you realize that the California land claims was not to improve the condition of the Indians, but it was to diminish the Indians. To really put out there that it's going to be about blood degree. We're going to start playing the blood degree program, the blood quantum. And this has hurt and damaged probably more tribal groups, more Indian people than anything else. It is one of the harshest programs, I think, that the government has ever placed on any peoples. Murder would have been simpler. Death would have been easier. When they go through and they correct the record, my grandfather's blood was reduced from 1/2 to 1/4. At the same time, his children's blood was increased from 1/2 to 3/4. And that's on the record. So it's a little bit confusing as to what's what. My grandmother's full blood from Pechanga. My grandfather was from Aguacalente. He was born at Aguacalente, and later moved to Paula. He was one of the ones who actually rode to meet with President Roosevelt. He was referred to as a young savage. He would not meet with the young savages. They made the 60-mile ride from Warner Springs to here, next door, to meet with the president, to plead their case. Please do not take us away from our homeland. Reason he came at a young age, because he could speak English. That's the reason he was picked to come. So the evolution of the roles then became subjective. It was supposed to be self-proclaimed. In other words, I'm an Indian. I'm entitled to some of this settlement. And that was supposed to be the end of it. But no, there's 2 witness clauses on each application. So now you become the subject of somebody else's determination. Now your entire life, your entire family lineage is no longer your determination. It's a determination possibly of your enemies. And I won't say her name, but there is a letter specifically says, we're rejecting this application because so-and-so doesn't recognize them. But they're supposed to be self-proclaimed, right? In other words, you're saying, I have a tie back to the 1852 treaties, and therefore I'm entitled to a certain amount of monetary settlement or whatever the settlement may be. It evolved into the water claims, docket 88-2, the docket 88 claims cases, so on and so forth. So then they keep modifying the blood degree, but everything seems to be going down rather than up. And then in the end, the Bureau says, these records are so bad, we can't even use them anymore, but you tribes, you go ahead and fight amongst yourselves over it. You go out and wreak havoc within your own peoples, and they do. And it's extremely unfortunate because now all the Bureau has to do is sit back and say, Santa Clara Pueblo, we can't get involved. When you look at Santa Clara Pueblo, it evolved out of a 600-year practice, known practice, of that if a man married a woman from outside of his tribe, or if a woman married a man from outside of her tribe, she went to that tribe. And her children became enrolled with that tribe. That was the dispute. And that was born out of a long traditional practice of what they did, and that's still common with people. It used to be common with us. My grandmother had, because she was Luiseño, spoke Luiseño language, she had to learn my grandfather's language. She learned how to speak Capeño. And that was the courtesy. And she had to identify herself under the old way, she would have become Capeño. That's who she would have been. But the government said, no, you can't do that anymore. You're a Pechanga Luiseño. So we're not going to allow your full blood to be counted with the Paula tribe. Even though today they identify the Paula tribe as Paula Luiseño, I can't count my Paula Luiseño or my Luiseño blood with Paula, even though it's identified as a Luiseño tribe. It's no longer identified as Capeño. And this is a result, and this is the outgrowth of the 1852 treaties. This is the impact that it's had through the California Indian Judgment Rolls, through the California land claims case. This is how it affects us today. And it's serious. And we've adopted, if you look at the treaties and you look at the San Luis Rey Indians and how many people are signers on that, why would the government come in and chop those people up and say, you San Luis Rey, if you marry a Paula, you can't count your San Luis Rey blood. But we identified you as such on the treaties. You're San Luis Rey Mission Indian, or you're a Luiseño. But we're going to chop you up to where you can't do that anymore. In other words, you may come in as a full-blood Indian, you may marry another full-blood Indian, but your kids are going to be one half. And we fell into it. How stupid is that? It doesn't get any more stupid than that. And I think that, Pechanga doesn't have a blood quantum. And they'll face that song someday, I know I'm crossing the line, I will, that we are Indian by virtue of our political affiliation, not by our degree of Indian blood. That's who we are. Now, very fortunate, I have grandchildren who are enrolled at Calusa, and we've got family all over the United States. Some are Pomo, I've got some that are from Arizona. I've got cousins from Arizona. And we know that the family's going to continue in one way or the other despite the government. But if there's going to be a fight, that has to be the fight today. To end this problem, for Indian people to take on the biggest problem that they have, and that is the question of who is an Indian. If Indians can't decide amongst themselves who an Indian is, the government's going to step in again, and there won't be an Indian. So, you know, and I'm going to end it now. I'm probably past my time. Thank you. We've gone, you know, and I'm going to say this. I'm not known for holding my tongue, but we've gone from fighting over our acorn territories to fighting over the territories of the Asian gamblers. That's what we're all about now. You know, I go down on Valley Boulevard in San Gabriel, and on one side of the billboard is an advertisement for Pala Casino, and on the other side is an advertisement for Pechanga Casino. We go where the money is. We go where the harvest is. And unfortunately, some of these tribal groups have interfered with other tribes who should be recognized because they don't want the competition and have directly interfered with their right to federal recognition. And that is absolutely wrong. That is absolutely wrong. So I've got to finish one more story since I served with Special Forces in Vietnam, so I witnessed the effects of Treaty of the Paris Peace Accords. I served with the 5th Special Forces Group over there along the Cambodian border, and part of our job was to stop the advance of the 5th, 7th, and 9th Divisions of the North Vietnamese Army from not infiltrating. They were openly granted permission to cross back into Vietnam. We had pushed them out and forced them back into Cambodia, and then all of a sudden we began the withdrawal. 25th Infantry had withdrawn from Tay Ninh. I was with the Duquay Group, Special Forces Group, assisting with them and the push back into Cambodia. And this is the effects of a treaty. We said, yes, you can come in. So we would encounter large groups of military and VA and then told to let them pass. We were giving territory back. And it was very difficult for us. And I fought with Indian teams over there. Indians found Indians over there. It was just the way it was kind of done. There was a communication that went on. My brother was killed in Vietnam fighting for the 7th Cavalry. So, but in that process, I got sent to Tonglishan because we had whipped the 5th NVA horribly. I used to walk through Pala when I lived at Pala because population of Pala was about 1,000 people, and we killed 4 times that many people in 3 days. And how we did it, how we systematically did it. But that wasn't the end of it. Now the enforcement of the other part of the treaty. With Special Forces, we had put together A teams comprised of Montagnards, comprised of Laotian teams, comprised of Vietnamese and Cambodians. And the United States engaged in a horrible process of systematically annihilating these teams, killing more than 300,000 Vietnamese in 2 weeks. This is treaty making. This was part of the Paris Peace Accords. It's the same thing as 1852 treaties. It doesn't change. It's a diminishment. And that's why I wanted to draw that link. I witnessed it. I saw it. I participated in it. I lived in Tonglishan for 2 weeks, surrounded by 15,000 NVA. We were firing in 360 degrees. And then all of a sudden we got the word, let them pass. We let them and the 101st VC Artillery Battalion move into within 30 miles of Saigon to prepare for the takeover in 1984. We gave it to them. But that's treaty making in the United States. That's how it's done. That's how it was done. That's how it'll always be. With no respect for what everybody else sacrificed. And Indians have sacrificed too much. Time to stop being a BIA Indian. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very powerful. So now we have Kim Marcus, and he's from the Santa Rosa Band of Coahuila Indians. And he did the opening blessing this morning, so great to have him back.
Kim Marcus, Mariam, Yahibatam, Sawishpake. My name is Kim Marcus, and it's an honor to be here and part of the panel, to be thanked those that are speaking, and I don't know how I can follow that act. That is some powerful words, and they're older. He's older than I am, and so I take that to heart as a part of our beliefs. That's true. These are truths that he's speaking. The panel are speaking their truths and how they see things in their own perspective, their own ways. Whether they're noted as in authority of degrees, or rather not as noted as degrees, or just a person or Indian, that alone gives them the value to speak what they need to speak. You don't have to have degrees and whatnot. Catherine showed that. Had an honorary degree. A lot of our people, for example, those heroes, and I want to speak of those heroes, those role models. Instead of chronology of that, I'll show you in a minute, and talk about a couple of personal stories relating to why I'm up here. And my role models was, I remember seeing that Louis Marcus. You can see his name on document on the paper here, which is given to us by the United States government. And as you scroll down, if you can scroll down a little, it was a land patent. Morongo, Marinyahem, Maranga. We're Serrano, come from 29 Palms area, Mara. We came from another world. We came here. And that's where we landed, Mara. And my grandpa Louis Macarium was his dad. That was my great-great-grandfather. When, if you scroll down more, Wilson came out and gave him this land patent, gave him the land patent, gave him the rights to have this allotment. And if you scroll down more, he signed and gave that personally to Louis Marcus. Louis told my dad that when that was being actually, the transaction was being happened, Louis didn't know who he was. Although Louis was an educated man, he still didn't understand who he was as far as authority was concerned. It didn't have that comprehension to him. That's what my dad said. He didn't understand what value as the president, as honorable president. And to me, it was just a thought of where he was coming from. It didn't have the full impact upon him. Because these were given out, and he said one more time, my dad said, Louis thought it was just another piece of paper. That piece of paper, I have the originals with my aunts from Woodrow Wilson. But it has a land patent number on it, and that was a number that was given to him. Well, under this, after he had passed, my father had passed, I had to go to federal court at Agua Caliente, and it was decided that the acreage would be given over to us. But I had to prove $100 worth of income to generate to keep the land. There was a court battle pending at an impasse for a while, and then it came pending. And so I had to keep proving. I had to prove $100 in order to keep the generating income for that land. It said some Morongo. And so we don't have water rights. I was telling a story just a couple hours ago from Dorothy Ramon's book, Wetiawa. It talks about a Marcus family. And that is my great-great-grandfather, Macarium Marcus. Later in the 1880s, 1890s, they got in a disagreement. And Macarium Marcus, they decided that there were Morongos. That was the name. Morongos weren't, it's a word, Morongo is not the correct meaning of that word of the people represented there. And they got in a disagreement with the rest of the Morongo family. Macarium said, I'm going to leave. They wanted to have him be Christianized or to Moravian, a Christian type of sect that he didn't want to be, which meant you would stop your language, you stop your beliefs and your rituals and your customs and traditions. He fought over it and said, that's it, no more. And he went over to his wife's home over at San Manuel in San Manuel. Santos Manuel's daughter. That was my grandmother, great-great-grandmother. He went there and left Morongo, and he denounced that. Well, as he left, Woodrow Wilson gave him this land. And so to this presently day, there was a court in action that was won. And so I don't have to prove that $100 of income. So, but I don't have water rights, it's just sitting there. A lot of my people in Morongo don't recognize us as Morongos as a result of that. My grandpa Louis, we used to go, when I was a young man, 7, he lived in San Bernardino, and he grew up and went to school, St. Bernardine's. And he played professional baseball up in Portland. The reason why he came back, he said, it was too cold up there. He said, but I'm losing my ways. So he came back home and denounced playing professional baseball. At 7 years old, my brother would take me, and my dad would sit there, and we'd be sitting, and my grandpa was an alcoholic. He had a lot of suffering. But I didn't see him as an alcoholic, I see him as my grandpa. Because I'll tell you, when I was sitting in that car, and he was talking to my dad, and he told my dad and my brother, I said, quiet. And you were quiet. When I was a boy, you were seen, you weren't heard. You kept quiet. My dad said, you shut up now because he's going to have his power. You say anything, that power might come and kill you. That's how it was. Grandpa Louis would stand there, and at night, we're sitting, and we're just sitting around, and all of a sudden he said, watch, he's just going to come out and do this. And he just came out. He started singing those bighorn sheeps, and he started dancing. And I sat there, and I was amazed. I was mesmerized, but I was touched. Not as an alcoholic person dancing, as a human being dancing that old song that nobody was dancing anymore or singing. That was my hero. After years of treaties and the oppression had got him to that point, and that's no excuse I'm trying to say, but this is his life. And being exiled from Morongo and having to be living in San Manuel and was an enrolled member there, having those feelings, he would still have the dance to prove that he was himself as his own identity. And to see that was an experience that I personally cherished. And I didn't know the impact of it as it was going on. I'm a young man, and I'm just thinking, because things are going on in life at that age that are just racing through your mind, and I seen that, and it just stuck out to me. The other one that stuck out to me was when I was in the big house. We had our big houses, Santa Rosa. And my step-grandpa, after my grandmother divorced Louis, she married Raymond Kalak. He was the chief, one of the last chiefs there, in Rincon, Washketian people. He was my step-grandpa. He had a sister named Walana. And we would sit there, and they would sing. And we had dirt floor in a shack. You would think it was a shack, an old rundown shack. That was our big house. They would call, oh, it's a rundown shack. I show pictures. It was our big house. It was our ceremonial house. That was special to us. When I would come into public and I would show that at an event, I would be ashamed a little bit because they would say it was a shack. And, you know, I had those feelings dealing with myself because can I feel that in public with others saying, you know, other kids telling me that's a shack, and letting that get to me. But when I would be there sitting on the wood benches, we had wood benches. They were very small and dirt floor. And then I'd lay on the floor. Valana would say, lay there. And my dad said, I'm going to pick him up, take him outside. You can't be doing that. And Valana said, just leave him there. For some reason, leave him there. So I remember I'd see Raymond, Alec, his brother, and they would sing in the Guanish. And that would put me to sleep. And that was one of the most peaceful times in my life that I would experience. And I didn't know it was going to be ending soon when we burned our big house down. If you'd like to get to the next in Santa Rosa, where my grandmother is from, there's a chronology of our people. In that chronology, and I'll just give you an example. In 1860, we had smallpox, which diminished a lot of our people. And my tortoise family there, Sawashpa, In 1867, under Manuel Largo, there was like 600 people around that area. If you could see that in 1877, I don't know if that's up there, smallpox again, and there was about 55 of our people there. And my dad and my grandma, Marcella, which took care of the big house before she passed, and then she gave it to my Auntie Marie. She said at that time we lost a lot of our people, and that they died from smallpox. Around June 1890, we only had like 25 of us left in the tribe. And if you continue to scroll down, there is some document, and it will show you the list of names of those people, if I did print that, if you want to keep going. And that's actually the reservation here. And this is the list in 1890 of what's left of our people. If you scroll down, Wanchis, the whole area was inhabited, was our people's. South Paquicta was the tortoises. They called them tortoises. The Spanish call us tortoise. Julian there is my great-great-grandfather. And he was a shaman, a popobo. And that was it on our list. We would say 200 that was still there in 50s. Now we only have an example of about 25 occupying the reservation. So I don't know about you, that is devastating to see this and that short account of that document, and which survived that and is still surviving. You want to click that one off and go to the next, take that off if you can, the whole thing, and then we'll go to the next. I know I don't have much time. There we go. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Of course, you've been talking a lot about your ratified treaties and unratified, and this is kind of a different eras of federal Indian policy. And I want to use that as a means of, you could see different periods, the colonial, Confederate, trade, and Intercourse Act era, the removal period, reservation era, allotment period, Indian Reorganization Act, termination era, and self-determination. If we scroll down, and you probably concentrate a lot on that, so I'm not going to concentrate as much in there, but the traditional eras that I choose to show, from the creation of our people to around the 1769s, our custom, traditions, and values were intact. And if a lot of the people here would agree to that, if they don't disagree, let me know. A traditional ceremony house for our Kuya people, the big house, that system was intact. The traditional social hierarchy and the rituals were intact. An example of our Kuya social hierarchy structures, you can see the net, a head person, the paha, his assistant, pools, the pools, the shamans, honyuk, the singers, the ritual singers, the rituals that were brought up ritually to sing. Not anybody just could sing. The Tewish, the dreamers, your pools, your shamans, and men. Do you think it was your doctors that were so talking about? Your elders, your young adults, and then your boys, your girls, and your babies. Contemporary society now is shifting towards that young youth. We're focusing a lot on youth. We pay respects to our elders, but are we really paying that, honoring our elders? That's the elders' time when they were here. And I don't think they felt that way. And I'll give you an example, living with and growing up with Sat Torres from Torres Martinez, Albino Siva, Robert Levi. They didn't feel that they were being honored enough. And they felt that it was diminishing that value. Because I sat a lot of hours with them. They said, I'm focusing on the youth now. And they used to honor and our way of our hierarchy was honoring those people. And now we're so involved with honoring youth. We shifted. The Spanish mission Indian period between this time of 69 and 1835, In my documents, in my writings, was there, the ceremonial house was still intact. Big house, 1835, 1920s, Indian controversy, the Catholicism and Christianity conversion. You had a lot of us being converted, willfully, on their own, and against their will. Ceremonial starting to diminish. The traditional hierarchy and the rituals starting to diminish at that time. 1920, 1970, the traditional ceremonial house and ceremonial bundles diminishing, burnings of the ceremonial houses. Ours in the 70s, late 60s, we burned our big house, fed the house, sang with the house, and then burnt. The 70s and 89s, the traditional recognized ceremonial leaders starting to diminish. Recognize your ceremonial leaders that were appointed. And recently, up to now, the traditional all-night wakes diminishing, few traditional elders diminishing, and the ceremonial singers surviving, barely surviving. Contemporary values and ideas starting to infest now. An infestation of contemporary ideas and values shifting from traditional morals and values, customs and tradition, shifting to a contemporary type of, because I got an education, I got a degree, and I sit on the council, I have more power than you who are singers, or you are elders. How is that role shifting? That's shifted. You see that value today. I could sit in a council meeting where you can have young men that are appointed that may have some education and talk down to your elders. What a shame. I sat in a council meeting, and my elder came up, George Torres, started speaking Kuya. Some of the members didn't like him, criticized him, and kicked him out of the meeting. One of the last elders, shifting. Contemporary values and ideas. I don't know if I have one more on there. Few traditional elders, leaders, ceremonial leaders, traditional protocol diminishing. And right now, to this present times, most of our elders are passing away. I called Tony Vasquez. I called him quite a bit. When I grew up, Bolana, when Raymond and my dad passed on, Bolana said, "Do you want to learn some of these songs?" And she gave me some of the Naquanish songs. Lorraine, her daughter, gave me a lot of the songs. She said, Mark and Carl on them, and also Tony Vasquez is knows those songs. Go over there. So I went to Tony in about 1990, 91 and started learning those songs from him. And I had a dream, and the dream came. I was singing wake songs with Albino, Catherine Sabo, and that was just us, Catherine, Albino, myself. Then my boy finally joined in about 1991, and would sing. And I said, Raymond, I'm singing both of these songs. I said, in my dream, my dad wanted me to go over to be with the Serranos and Cahuillas. He said, well, do what you got to do in your dream. And so I stopped singing a lot of those Naquanish songs with him. Before his passing, I called him, and I said, how do I do? They're asking me to blow this tobacco. I said, but things are happening. People do not respect it anymore. He said, you just keep trying. You keep going forward, and that's what you're going to be faced with. Things are going to be placed like we have been placed in our lives that are going to be having to face and overcome. And that's a challenge, is what you call the warrior, or the person that is taking that position. You took that position. You deal with it. I don't want to hear you say nothing about it. I want you to just go and walk through it, and I appreciate you calling me. And I would have talks with him like that. Our roles today, as far as traditional people, a lot of it has diminished. And today, we stand as an Indian. One of the sad things I faced was, of course, Louis Marcus was enrolled at San Manuel. My dad was enrolled at San Manuel. My grandmother was from Santa Rosa. Before my dad passed on, he moved to Santa Rosa because my grandma was sick and transferred and moved over there. Customarily, you could move to that reservation and your people would accept you. Not because of your blood degree or enrollment. They would accept you because that was your people. And my daughter turned 18 and she applied for San Manuel, and they denied her. Because there's no lineage of blood that is actively currently as an enrolled member there. And so, how could they do that? When my grandfather, they wrote their book on the back of my grandfather's language, Louis Marcus. They'd asked me to come do ceremonies with Martha Chacon, who was an elder. And I would go sing with Catherine, and then I'd go blow tobacco there. And so when my daughter, as of June this year, they denied her rights to be a tribal member. Shame on you. Shame. And that's the authorities that some of the tribes are given the empowerment to do, to make those decisions. Is it right? Is it wrong? I leave that question to ponder. For me, personally, living through that, when you have something to your child that has happened to you, you want to protect that child. And there's nothing I can do about it. And so I live with it. Another form of oppression, correct? Yep. Between ourselves. And you mentioned it really well. How our people are being oppressed. What I did was go up back home in the mountains where I live in Santa Rosa and sat up in the mountains and sang. And I felt okay. There's been empires that have been across the world that have rise. Roman Empire, Casino Empire. But there'll be times when things will change. And I believe strongly that our people will come back to who we are originally. I have that belief. I wouldn't sing the songs I sing, blow the tobacco I blow, because I believe that strongly. I believe that our people will return back to who we are. So with that, I want to conclude that I always have that vision, you know. And I see everybody when I come to events, all the events that I go, and I'm so happy to still see them, you know. Even at San Manuel, I'm still happy to see my people, you know. Some of the elders I do, because I know more of the elders there. I'm happy to see them, even in spite of what happened, you know. Even in spite, some of the elders say, well, if we give you permission to be an enrolled member, we're going to have to open up to everybody. Well, how selfish of you. And you're my elder. How am I to look up to that? So those are just some of my personal and accounts that I had of history. So I would just want to say thank you for the panel to allow me to be up here. Thank you.